Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin. Amma ba'd, fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. We will begin again from ayah number 8 and then continue inshallah. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wa minan nasi, and among the mankind, among the people, man yaqulu, there are some who say, amanna billah, that we have believed in Allah, wa bil yawmil akhir, and in the or with the day of judgment, wa ma hum bi mu'minin, but they are not truly the believers. Now, min in Arabic language comes lit tab'id. Tab'id means some, not the whole people. Among the people there are some. So whenever you will see the word min in Arabic language, it will tell you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to have the exceptions. One is the known, one is the default, and this min is going to be giving the sort of exception. Not everybody who say, I believe in Allah and in Akhirah, but some of them who say their claims do not match their inner convictions. Now, instead of basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala coming out and telling them that these are the people, these are the individuals, these are the, say for example, groups, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using the indirect message that people are not humiliated, but they also get the message. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or His Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam always uses the methodology of proper education. जिसको हम कहते हैं ना, सोटा नहीं मारते. Get the message across, but don't humiliate the people. Even when the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam wanted to identify some very individual issues in the community, most of the time in the hadith you would see that he will never directly talk about the individuals or talk about those direct issues. For example, one time, as the hadith says, that جاء رهط إلى بيوت أزواج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وسألوا عن عبادتي. A group of people came to the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they asked them about the pattern or the framework of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's ibadah schedule. When they were told how much Rasulullah sallam does tahajjud, how many days he fasts, and how much time he spends in dhikr, كَأَنَّهُمْ تَقَالُوهَا, they felt as if they are not doing enough. Alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullah. So one of them, he took the qasam and he said, I will spend the entire night in tahajjud and I will not rest. The other said, I will always fast and I will not break the fast. I didn't know that the Prophet ﷺ was fasting too much. And the third said, Lan atazawwaj nisa, I'm not going to marry my marriage contract, anything, because this is taking me away from the dhikr and ibadah of Allah. So when the Prophet ﷺ came to know, and he knew the names of those people, he called the community and he did not call them out by names. He said that some people among you said such and such and such, but remember, I fast and I break the fast. There are times when I do qiyamil layl and there are times when I sleep. Wa atazawwaj nisa, and you see, I have got, multiple wives. فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. So whosoever will deviate from my sunnah is not part of me. My taqwa is far greater than you, but look at the balance. So even at that time, he did not point out the individuals. And here I want to make one point very clear, that these ayat are mostly about the hypocrites. And the Prophet ﷺ was not given the list of hypocrites by Allah, because there are several surahs in the Quran. Surah Al-Munafiqun, إِذَا جَاءَكَ الْمُنَافِقُونَ قَالُوا نَشْهَدُ إِنَّكَ لَرَسُولُ اللَّهِ. Entire surah of Munafiqun is about the hypocrites. A lot of Surah At-Tawbah talks about also the hypocrites, the Munafiqeen. And there is part of Surah An-Nur when some of the people accused Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha of that, attack. Even over there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Munafiqun. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allahu ya'lamuhum. You don't know them, but Allah knows them. And if He wants to, He will expose them. So it is clear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give the Prophet ﷺ the list of what? The names of munafiqeen or hypocrites, except in one situation. And that is in Ghazwa Tabuk. In Ghazwa Tabuk, all of us we know that when the Prophet ﷺ came to know that the Roman Empire, as you know, Roman Empire was big empire, but in the 5th century, they got divided between the Western and Eastern. Western was led from Rome, Eastern was led from Constantinople. So then later on it was called Byzantium. So when the Byzantium king came to know that now the Muslims are controlling the area which is between, say for example, Taif and between what is Yemen. So because they depended a lot upon the stuff which came from China, Persia, as well as India, and they used to send their stuff from Istanbul, from Europe. So they felt that these trade routes are now going to be controlled by the Muslims. Second, what happened when the Prophet ﷺ conquered Taif and Hawazin? Hawazin was their main ally. So the soldiers of Hawazin, they went to Turkey and they told them what happened between the Muslims and how the Muslims are going to be controlling the ins and out of the Arabian Peninsula. So the king of Byzantium, emperor, decided to come and attack Medina and get rid of this whole issue, because he wanted to control the trade routes. So when the Prophet ﷺ got the news that the Byzantium Empire, the people of Hawazin, the people of Thaqif, the people of Taif, and some of those individuals, when the Prophet ﷺ conquered Mecca, they ran away. So all of them are now planning to come and attack Medina. And imagine there are about 8 to 10,000 Muslims at that time, or maybe 20,000 Muslims in Medina. So when this whole army of hundreds and thousands will be coming to Medina, they will destroy it. So the Prophet ﷺ decided to take the Muslims out of Medina and go all the way to the end of Arabian Peninsula, which is Tabuk. Tabuk is right now at the border of Saudi Arabia and Jordan. So the Prophet ﷺ went where the army, like the army of the Byzantium, will come in the main desert of Saudi Arabia, so that they can meet them there instead of them coming to Medina and the people of Hawazin joining them, Thaqif joining them, people of Mecca joining them. And this is the time when the Prophet ﷺ wanted to get every possible individual to participate. And that is an organized army. For centuries, they are the superpower. Muslims do not have the standing army. They do not even have the weapons. So the Prophet ﷺ is collecting every sword, every lance, every arrow, every basically right. So sometimes he's encouraging people to what? Share the right. Some of them cannot even find the right, so the Prophet ﷺ is making the arrangement. This is where some of the hypocrites of Medina found the opportunity to get rid of Rasulullah. So when the Prophet ﷺ is coming down from one of the hills on the way to Tabuk, 14 of them decided that they are going to agitate the camel of Rasulullah. Because once the camel is coming down and you suddenly what? Throw the arrow or scare it, it's going to really what? Get agitated, and when it comes agitated while descending, possibly that the Prophet ﷺ will basically get hurt. This is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the name of what? Those 14. And he shared those names with Hudhaifa ibn Al-Yaman. And why Hudhaifa ibn Al-Yaman is called the person who is keeping the secret of Rasulullah? Because the Prophet ﷺ told him, if something like that happens, these people are responsible. Keep an eye upon them. But he did not allow him to mention those names. If nothing happens, don't share it. So he died and he did not share it with anybody, even though he knew the names of those Munafiqun. So basically, the phenomena of Nifaq started in Medina and not in Mecca. Because there are, as the Quran says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ. Among the believers, there are some who say we believe in Allah and we believe in Akhirah. In Mecca, anybody who does not want to believe had no moral or social pressure. So they were kuffar. Actually, they openly said, we don't believe in you, O Prophet Muhammad sallam, or we don't believe in Akhirah. The framework or the phenomena of Nifaq began in Medina. And as you know, Surah Al-Baqarah is the Madani chapter. So it is addressing that issue of what Nifaq. So after the translation, we'll go to the background. يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهِ. They deceive Allah. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, and those who believe. وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ, and they do not deceive except their own selves. وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ, and they do not even perceive that they are trying to deceive. So they have got what? Not even proper consciousness of what they are doing. One thing I want you to understand, that ma comes in two ways. One is called ma mausula, and second is called ma nafiya. In Arabic language, when you want to deny something or negate something, you can do it two ways. Somebody asks you the question, do you have water? And you say, la. No, I don't. When you want to negate something categorically, you can say yes or no. That is done by la. But sometimes when you are denying the fact, you can also bring what? The word ma, and that ma sometimes comes as mausula and sometimes as nafiya. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used the ma nafiya in these two ayat twice. وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. While they claim that they are believers, but they are not believers. And then وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ, and they do not deceive. Why? Because the first part talks about their deception, and now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to contradict that. So this is what? The conflict between the first part of the ayah and the negation in the second ayah. فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٍ. In their heart is the disease. فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increased that disease. He expanded, or we can say even He allowed expansion of that disease. وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. And for them is the chastising punishment, بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ, because of what they used to deny, or because of the lies which they used to put into it. Now, alim is from the word alam. Alam means pain. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word alim, for them is going to be chastising punishment, something which will cause them a lot of pain, physical pain, mental pain, torture. When it comes to azim, azim means something very big, something comprehensive. It can be physical, it can be moral, it can be psychological, it can be in so many ways. But whenever the word alim comes, this is something which is torturous, physically torturous. So that's where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ, and whenever it is told to them, it is said to them, لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, do not commit corruption in the earth. Fasad, when something is genuinely intact and you cause its disruption, or when something is genuine and you cause it to be infected, or anything which is basically against the original shape is going to be fasad. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا, and when it is said to them, do not commit corruption in the earth, قَالُوا, they said or they say, إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ, certainly we are the ones who are the reformers. أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ, no, certainly they are the ones who are the corrupters. وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ, but they do not perceive. Now, وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ and وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is emphasizing that they do not even comprehend the consequences of their actions. Now here let me give you a little bit of background, and then inshallah we will go into the tafsir of these ayat a bit further. Before Rasulullah sallam comes to Medina, Medina has got its own landscape. Jews are there, and many of the Jews have migrated to Medina after the Jewish diaspora in 70 AD. As you know, when the Roman Emperor came and he attacked Jerusalem in 70 AD, 70 years after Jesus, peace be upon him. The reason was that these Jewish people who have been ruling that central area, which is Jerusalem and that southern, what they call Judea. This is the place where most of the ships will land, and from here they will go to Persia, they will go to China, they will go to India. So anybody who was controlling this area would control the ins and out of the Mediterranean Sea. I want you to look at the state of Israel right now. Why the Western powers, they put state of Israel at the same place? Because Haifa, Gaza, and basically what is right now between Beirut, and this is the area which is what? The most important area in the Mediterranean Sea. Because it connects one side to Turkey and Europe, and then on the Mediterranean, on one side is Africa, on the other side is Europe. You know, France, all of those countries, Spain, they are on the Mediterranean. And then from Morocco to Tripoli, Tunis, Libya, Egypt, all of them are on the other side. So this is the area which connects between Asia, Europe, and Africa. Anybody who controls this controls 3 continents. So when these Jewish people were there, they were not paying attention to the commandments of what? The Roman Emperor. So the Roman Emperor decided to come and crush them and control this area. They took the refuge in their temple, because even at that time there was agreement among different forces that the religious places should be respected. But the Roman Empire emperor was so tired of them that he demolished the entire Roman temple and actually demolished every part of it because these rebels were fighting them. It is just like, say for example, if nowadays you go to Masjid al-Aqsa, when people are attacked, they go inside and now the army goes after them. So at that time, they were expelled from the Jerusalem area. Some of them went to Persia, others went to Yemen, some of them went to basically Syria, and from there the 10 lost tribes. But a group of them came to the Arabian Peninsula. So they basically came at that time Yathrib. Yathrib was the place which became Medina after Rasulullah sallam. So they were there from 70 AD. Second group of them went to Khaybar. You know Khaybar? Because once they came from Jerusalem, Khaybar comes first, then comes Medina. So therefore, these two areas, the Jews of Khaybar and the Jews of Yathrib, have been living there for almost 6 centuries or 5 centuries before Rasulullah sallam. They have built their alliances with the local people. There were 2 main tribes in Medina, Aus and Khazraj. Aus and Khazraj were Arab tribes. But once the Jews came, and they have been there for 600 years, now they have made the alliances with these tribes. Banu Qaynuqa, Banu Nadir, and Banu Qurayza, these are the 3 main tribes of the Jews. So 2 of them, Banu Qurayza and Banu Qaynuqa, they became the allies of Aus. And the other became the allies of Khazraj. So they will keep on spending money basically to make them fight. You know, I really want us to understand what is happening right now. How people rule because they divide people. And this is what the Quran, basically the subtle message of the Quran is, to look at these situations so that you can reflect upon what is going on. Even right now, 20 million. Sometime we think that they are controlling 8 billion people. Why? Divide and rule. Give them money on interest, sell the weapons, and actually all the empires do this one. I mean, if you look at the Russian Empire, if you look at the British Empire, if you look at the American Empire, this is what happened. Cause them to fight, keep on supplying the weapons and make money and become rich. So this was the situation. Now, they were smaller in number because Aus and Khazraj were greater in number. And before Islam, when the Medinian structure was established, the Aus and Khazraj were fighting, but one of them, Abdullah bin Abi Salul, because he had the connection with both of them and he used the same kind of mechanism, divide and rule. So they appointed him as a sort of their leader. So he was accepted the leader of Aus and Khazraj even before Rasulullah sallam was invited to come to join Medina. But then when they found that Rasulullah sallam is the Prophet of Allah and more moral, a man of principle, so they invited him and now they agreed upon him. Abdullah ibn Abi Salul did not accept Rasulullah sallam initially because now instead of him, Rasulullah sallam is honored. So the Jews did not accept him, and Abdullah ibn Salul and the people who are with him who are still mushrikeen. But when Rasulullah sallam was given the victory by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the battle of Badr, then Muslims became a power. Before that, as we know, Constitution of Medina, Rasulullah sallam had the alliances even with the mushrikeen and even with the Jews, that if anybody will attack Medina from outside, all of us are going to be defending it. But after the battle of Badr, because these Jews and many of these tribes, they secretly supported the kuffar. Actually, they incited them to come and attack. So from that time on, Rasulullah started what? Having the different identity. This is the time when Abdullah bin Abi Salul accepted Islam and his people accepted Islam because he could not fight the Islamic power anymore. So now he accepted it, but inside he, along with his people, was still what? Not, sincerely Muslim. So these ayat talk about those people that they come to you and they say you are the Prophet of Allah. They believe in Akhirah. But what Islam is trying to show, what the Quran is telling you, that even though this person is a leader, but he does not have the moral courage, his inside does not coincide with his outside. Nifaq is what? Something is outside and something very different is inside. Now, Islam basically is identifying, the Quran is identifying several things. One is that a person who is the man of principle, the person who has got a strong personality, or the person who is basically going to stand up for what he believes in, cannot have the hypocrisy. For a person to be hypocrite, there are several psychological problems. Number one, it's weakness of the personality. That person is looking for validation. He does not have the self-esteem and he wants to avoid the social repercussions or the consequences of what his belief or his principles. So does not want to make a sacrifice. So when he comes in front of Rasulullah, he says, I believe in you. I believe in Allah. I am part of the Muslim community. But when he is with his shayateen, he says, I am just mocking them. Because he does not have the strength of what character to say what he believes in. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in these ayat, that the outward actions and their reactions do not match their inward belief. And this is whenever it takes place, this is the sign of Nifaq. Nifaq is of two kinds. One is Nifaq Aqadi and second is Nifaq Amali. Nifaq Aqadi is that a person says there is no God but Allah, but inside does not believe that there is only one God or God is in existence. Or somebody says, as the ayah of the Quran, Surah Munafiqun tells us, إِذَا جَاءَكَ الْمُنَافِقُونَ قَالُوا نَشْهَدُ إِنَّكَ لَرَسُولُ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ إِنَّكَ لَرَسُولُهُ وَاللَّهُ يَشْهَدُ إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ لَكَاذِبُونَ. When they come to you, they say, you are the Rasul of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah knows that you are the Rasul of Allah. But Allah also witnesses that these are not believers. They are lying to you. So therefore, basically what happens is that with the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gaining the power, they do not have the courage to lose their social status or to come out and say, we don't believe in you, we are not going to imitate you, we are not going to follow you, because they are taking the validation for the sake of financial, social, or economic gains. But inside, they don't know that their outward confession is not going to be accepted in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Basically, يَحْلِفُونَ بِاللَّهِ كَمَا يَحْلِفُونَ لَكُمْ. They basically think that they can deceive even Allah, as they are saying qasam and such in front of you. They think that they can do it the same thing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So basically, this is what the Quran is highlighting. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ آمِنُوا. When it is told to them, Aminu, have this kind of iman, kama amana nas, as the Sahaba, Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in, had the faith in Rasulullah sallallahu. Number one, let me tell you one thing, that among the Muhajirin, you don't expect any hypocrite. Because Muhajirin are the one who sacrificed their homes, sacrificed their families, went through the torture, and migrated to Medina. If a person does not believe in Rasulullah sallam or in Akhirah, that person will not sacrifice everything for it. Until Islam became the power, there was no reason for anybody to be hypocrite because there was nothing to offer. So Muhajirin, there could not be any Munafiq among them. It was only in Medina and among only those people who were part of Aus and Khazraj, so they were confused. And among them, there were some who doubted the authenticity of Rasulullah sallam. There were others who were looking for social validation. There were others who had their financial connections. They did not want to lose their friends, and they did not want to lose the Muslims. And there were some others who basically were confused. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cover them with various examples in the coming surahs. Those different categories of munafiqeen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cover them. So when they are told, believe as the Muhajirin, believe like the Sahaba, because these Sahaba, they had their own connections, but they trusted Rasulullah sallam, or they basically chose Allah and Akhirah over dunya. Do it like that. قَالُوا أَنُؤْمِنُ كَمَا آمَنَ السُّفَهَاءُ. They say, should we have the iman, conviction, or faith like these fools? Now it tells you that what is the reason why there is so much hypocrisy, because they did not take the message of Rasulullah sallam or the message of Quran seriously. They doubted the authenticity of this message. And actually, this is one of the main problems of hypocrisy even among ourselves. We are born and raised in the Muslim household. If we have not studied Islam, if we have not studied the Quran, or if we have not understood the true essence of Islamic message, we could be Muslims because we were born in a Muslim household, but there is a difference between a traditional Muslim and a conscious Muslim. A conscious Muslim is who studies Islam and his inner self becomes convinced that it is authentic. So his interactions with Islam are conscious interactions. The traditional, or somebody who is born and raised in the Muslim world, sometimes that person, when he or she is in that kind of setting where everybody is doing something good, they would do it. But when they are alone by themselves, because it's not the conscious connection with Islam, so sometimes they do not give the same kind of seriousness to the acts of Islam. So if somebody believes that Islam is not meant for 21st century, or it was good for Pakistan or Bangladesh, the underdeveloped countries, but for the modern world it is not, believe me, that person is not going to be acting upon Islam when he or she is out of that setting. So in the same fashion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that these munafiqeen, when they were even given the opportunity to increase their iman, to get serious about their faith, just like their own friends, their own buddies of Aus and Khazraj were like them. And look at their situation and look at their situation right now. And now it tells, because they did not think that these people who are making the sacrifices of their businesses, their families, are wise enough. Because they thought that by Islam or because of Islam, we should benefit something, either get money, business, and be part of the power. But somebody is sacrificing his money and sacrificing his family or is being martyred, to them this was astaghfirullah, lack of what? Prudence. Because worldly perspective, these were the losers. So therefore they considered them not as, fool or stupid or not smart enough to understand the realities of what is going on. So therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ala innahum humus sufa. Actually they think that the others are fool, or they are not properly understanding or at the same intellectual capacity, but these are the people who are preferring something which is short-living, something which is transient over something which is eternal. وَلَكِنْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ, but they do not even know. So now this ilm is, number one, they have either not studied that iman or the character of Rasulullah sallam or the implications of believing in him and making the sacrifices for the sake of Allah. This is one thing. Or they do not know the reality of what is coming to them in akhirah. So therefore their iman or their ilm makes them make the wrong judgment. وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قَالُوا آمَنَّا. وَإِذَا, and when لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, when they meet those who believe, قَالُوا آمَنَّا, they said, we believe, we are just like you. وَإِذَا خَلَوْا إِلَى شَيَاطِينِهِمْ, and when they are one-to-one with their own shayateen. Now instead of calling their friends, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using the word shayateen, because among the human beings there are shayateen as there are shayateen among the jinn. So now those people who entice other people towards evil or take them away from the real important things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying what? These are their shayateen. And actually, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that every human being has got a shaitan. As we know that we have got the capacity to be angels and we have got the capacity to be what? Shaitan. Now, what is this shaitan? This nafs al-ammara. Now, the Prophet ﷺ said that this shaitan keeps their what? Nose on their heart. Whenever they remember Allah, it just pushes back. Whenever they are ghafil, it keeps on what? Pinching them. So therefore, even every individual has got the shaitan, but when the external shaitan reminds somebody, so it becomes a party. So therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in their heart is the marad. Now when they are getting to the infected environment, it increases their shayateen or their, devilish attitude, and this is what increases their hypocrisy and their rebellion. قَالُوا إِنَّا مَعَكُمْ. When they go to their own shayateen, they say, we are with you. إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُسْتَهْزِئُونَ. Certainly we are mocking them. So first of all, they don't think that Rasulullah sallam is the messenger of Allah, or he speaks on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they don't take those people who believed in him as wise and serious. Number two, inside they are mocking. So they are not sincere in their belief. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, what is the reason of their hypocrisy, which is not understanding the truth of the prophethood of Rasulullah sallam, not understanding the consequences of their actions, and not taking it seriously. Allahu yastahzi'u bihim. Actually, it is Allah who mocks them. وَيَمُدُّهُمْ, and he extends them. He basically what? Increases them. فِي طُغْيَانِهِمْ, in their rebellion. يَعْمَهُونَ, blindfolded. So when these people, they showed this kind of attitude, when they've got doubt even about the authenticity of Rasulullah sallam or the message, and they are intentionally mocking, Allah has written them off. So now they are unable to see actually even the truth which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed.